What is up, everybody? Welcome back to Blood Splatter Chatter. Doing something a little bit different tonight. Excited to be talking about Jenifer from Dario Argento. All right, again, we are here doing something a little bit different because this is actually from a television show, Masters of Horror, episode 4, which aired from 2005 to early 2007. And I was actually introduced to this television show by my man, Mr. Rockin Robbie Billups from Pop Culture Philosophers. What up, my brother? Thank you for being here, dude.
Dude, I'm so excited to be here. In fact, I forgot or didn't realize that I was the person who introduced you to this franchise, to this series, which is Emmy award-winning, absolutely great stuff. And out of all of the horror for TV anthologies that we've gotten throughout the years, and there's tons of them, this is truly the master of the anthology on television.
So far from what I've watched, because this is actually the first one that I watched Jenifer when you also introduced me to Dario Argento a few years back. I went and checked out this episode, and I'll just say,
when I just want to regardless, like when I pass away, if there's anything that can be put on my tombstone, right, an epitaph, he introduced people to Dario Argento. That would be it, man. Life purpose achieved.
and Masters of Horror. So I watched the Argento one. It's on Tubi. It's out there. You can go check it out. The amount of sex that is in this episode, I was like, holy shit. We're definitely going to dig deep into it because that's kind of what this episode is all about to me. But I'm like, damn, Argento went crazy. Now, having went back and I watched most of the first season, kind of preparing for this, get myself even more familiar with the show, I'm like, it's almost par for the course. This is a very sexy series. It's almost like they were told you have to have sex. You have to have some boobs in every single episode of Masters of Horror.
Well, this was a Showtime series, right? So it's like paid cable, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like paid extra channels for cable back when that was still like a novelty,
right?
Back in the day, right? And it's so crazy when I was rewatching Jenifer. It's so crazy to think about how long ago Masters of Horror actually was. And so like you're watching Jenifer and he's got like a CRT TV, and I'm just like, oh my goodness, I'm old, right? So it makes me feel old too, because to me it still feels fresh. It still feels new. Masters of Horror was great. And that was the thing back in the day. Cinemax, HBO, like we're talking about the era of Deadwood, Sopranos, Oz. We're talking about those kind of shows being out there. And yes, sex was definitely utilized in those premium cable channels for all their shows back in the day. Now we've kind of tamed that down just a little bit.
Yeah.
But man, Masters of Horror, what a revelation when this came out. And it fit right in with that cable premium mode for that era.
So far, I was thinking like, I'm going to watch enough to give people some recommendations. And as I said, watch like the first 8 episodes, and there's 2 seasons of it, 12 episodes-ish each season. I would say it's not even worth, it is worth, I guess, recommending some individuals. Just start at the beginning and go, because I've yet to watch one that wasn't fucking awesome. Like, they're all really good.
Well, you're telling me right now that you're only in season 1. You haven't done any of the season 2 bits yet. So that's fine. That's fine. I'm glad that you're there, right? Season 2 is definitely weaker than season 1. And there's actually kind of a season 3. So financially, it just wasn't viable for Showtime to renew it for a 3rd season. But NBC, which is part of the whole thing apparently, or at least was at the time, they picked it up for broadcast television, right? And it aired on NBC as Fear Itself.
You have nothing to fear but fear itself. Thursdays at 10 starting June 5th on NBC.
Which ran for 1 season, but it's basically the same thing. John Landis has an episode there, a few other, but not as many. Like Argento doesn't have one, because there's no way Argento could make a movie that could be broadcast on NBC.
That's my first thought.
Some of them were cool. There's some interesting ideas, but definitely without the gore, without the sex, without the violence, it doesn't quite carry over the success that Masters of Horror was, which it was a success, at least amongst the horror community.
Right. Which I mean, I could totally see. I guess I should have said this from the get-go. If you haven't heard what this series was, it was basically exactly what it sounds like. His name's Mick Garris, I believe.
Yeah.
The creator of the show. He's also a filmmaker in his own right. And he is the one that kind of went out and gathered all these different masters of horror. John Carpenter, Toby Hooper, Takashi. Want to do that
Takashi
one for
Miike.
me? Thank you. Appreciate that. Dario Argento, just a lot of names that you would know. Stuart Gordon, Don Coscarelli. And they're all about an hour long, which for me is almost perfect. Like
Yeah.
they're all just these simple, well written, well acted. There's a lot of actors that you're going to see that you're going to know that are kind of small name, like, oh, I know that guy type of people, with some other like bigger name actors that are sprinkled in there.
With all the talent attached to it, it's
Mhm.
kind of like a continuation of Tales from the Crypt.
Tales from the Crypt.
Because Tales from the Crypt, when you look at it, you're like, holy cow, that person did an episode, like the actor, that director, that writer. There's a lot of talent behind that. But in particular, this was talent that was gone after because they were some of the legends
Right.
of horror, right? And what's crazy is that at this time, this series came out in the 2000s, right? At this time, John Carpenter, Dario Argento, Toby Hooper, Don Coscarelli, these were not household names necessarily. These were not people that were actively producing work that was making waves and making people pay attention. That day was gone for a lot of these people, and it brought them back. In particular, Argento. And that's what I love about this. And you were talking about like specific episodes. Yeah, everybody should watch every single episode, right? Because there's all something there. But like some of the best work in horror from some of these filmmakers is in this series. I think Cigarette Burns by John Carpenter is one of the best things he's ever done. I think Jenifer and Pelts are some of the best like later period Dario Argento stuff that's out there. I think Incident on and Off a Mountain Road is technically the best Don Coscarelli film that he's ever made. Joe Dante did Homecoming for the first season, which is not my favorite in the first season, but his second season effort, Screwfly Solution, is really good. I like that one a lot.
Now, did you name another one that he did? Does he have
Pelts.
another? Okay, that's in season 2.
In season 2, he did Pelts, which is about cursed raccoons that somebody kills to make a coat with.
God.
Right?
If you knew my history with raccoons, you would know I want to see that.
Dude,
I hate fucking
Argento,
raccoons.
Cursed Raccoons starring Meatloaf.
No,
I just told you, man. I just
Yeah.
told you.
Well, to your point exactly, these are a lot of people that the limelight had long since passed them. I just watched Stendhal syndrome. Is that how you say it?
I think so. I say Stendhal syndrome. Yeah, that's what I say.
It has some highlight moments, but it's like it was such a drop off. Like it's so amateur feeling in a lot of ways with the acting. I don't know about the direction, but there's moments of brilliance in it. But for me, it was like such a step up from where he was there in like 95 to this in 2005. Like he seemed like it rejuvenated him or something. It's so much better than what he was doing in the 90s from what I've seen. Would you agree?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I think the biggest thing that hit a lot of these filmmakers in the 90s was the tonal shift of the audience, right? Like in the late 80s, horror movies start going soft. Italy hadn't caught up yet, right? But a lot of the films that Argento's making in the 90s, some of them are Italian productions, but a lot of them are American productions as well. But we're also talking about an age of post Nancy Reagan, Just Say No, parental advisory stickers on CDs. We're in this kind of like this fake, phony, like moral thing going through the 90s, right? Where everything's supposed to be family friendly and we're supposed to be progressive and this kind of stuff, right? And it was even happening back then, right?
Yeah,
And
because it sounds pretty familiar.
Yeah, well, we were dealing with a lot of censorship. That's why like the early 80s slashers are way different than the late 80s slashers, right? And so what happened was Argento didn't have a lot of money to make some of these movies. Now, to make Tenebrae, to make Suspiria, he needs money to make that. In the 90s, nobody's given Argento $1 million just to do a crane shot going up and down a house like he did in Tenebrae. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
But I mean, that's one of the differences is I don't think it was ever something about the craft or technical skill of people like Argento or even Landis or Carpenter or Romero, even, who was approached to do Masters of Horror, but it never lined up. He's like the one, him and Wes Craven are the ones that are like really, really missing, right?
Yeah, definitely.
So they had the budgetary constraints. They had the just hold, like, think about in the UK, right? You had the video nasty stuff in the 80s. Like, that stuff was coming hard in the 90s. They thought they were over it, but there's a lot of gnarly stuff from the 90s, but not quite like it was in the 80s.
Right.
And in the 2000s, we started loosening that up a little bit after the release of Saw and Hostel. That's why James Wan and Eli Roth are so important to this genre, was because they helped break free. Because this is something that happens periodically in horror cinema, right? Is there where movies can be very gnarly and get into subjects that are like considered taboo and this and stuff and this and that. But then like there's this whole like backlash where we have to like go back into this little hole, and then it takes people like Eli Roth, like James Wan, just like before them, John Carpenter and Dario Argento, to come out and break that molding.
Right. Hell yeah, man. Speaking of Argento, as I said before, I could not have a better person to be joining me for this episode. Who is Dario Argento? What is it about Argento? Like, why do you love the band so much?
I love Argento because he loves art, right? Everything he makes, even the shitty movies that he's made, they are beautiful in some form or fashion, through some facet of a lens. His work is beautiful. He cares about art. He comes up in Italy. He's a true Italian, right? He's drinking wine, eating good food, looking at good architecture, looking at great sculptures and paintings. He's surrounded by the beauty that mankind is able to do, right? That's something that we don't have here in America that they do have in Europe, right? Where the history is so prevalent in the architecture and structure of the city, right? Dario Argento lives in Italy. He is not that far from some of the greatest pieces of paintings and sculptures and just architecture. Like it's surrounding him. Some of the best food in the world comes from Italy, right? The culture there is a culture of pleasure, a culture of necessity, a culture that's blue collar and like white collar all kind of wrapped up, where even if you're at the lowest rungs of the social ladder, you still appreciate good food, good art, right? And Argento was making art. He's making something beautiful, and he loves doing that with truly bizarre topics. And he said Jenifer is one of the most bizarre things he's ever made. But
one of the most bizarre things I've ever seen, for
no
sure.
kidding, right? And he told everybody, and it's actually an adaptation of a Bruce Jones, Bernie Wrightson Creepy story from like Creepy. It's in the 60s. I don't remember the exact.
There was part of me that was hoping that I could be the one to tell you that. I'm like, I wonder if Robbie fucking knows this.
Of course I know that, man. I used to have the Creepy Presents Bernie Wrightson hardcover, man.
I figured.
But and also a big Bruce Jones fan. He had an incredible run on Incredible Hulk, but Bernie Wrightson's one of the legends of the industry.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Not just the comic industry, but the horror industry, right? Like a lot of horror fans love Bernie Wrightson. That being said, Argento, he's doing these truly bizarre, gnarly, gross, subversive, transgressive, and in-your-face movies, but he's doing it with this sense of, we're making a piece of art. We're showing you how artistic the profane can be. We're showing you how beautiful the ugly of humanity can be. We're showing you all these things, and obviously Suspiria, Tenebrae, Phenomena, even some of those movies from back in the day, when he was at the height of his career and he could like get anything done that he wanted to get done, that stuff, it works better. But even in Jenifer, you see what he's doing, right? So that's who Argento is. He is a maverick filmmaker who will do what he wants to do, however he wants to do. And unlike some people, some of his contemporaries, as much as I love John Carpenter, he's like the jobber. He gets in there and gets the job done and does it perfectly well. George A. Romero is kind of like that as well, right? Toby Hooper. Some of these dudes, they have that blue collar aspect, but Dario Argento brings along with that maverick, do whatever the fuck it takes, be subversive, be transgressive, push those boundaries, those same kind of tenets that Romero and Craven and Hooper and Carpenter have. he does it with a true European artistic flair that
Yeah.
never comes across as ultra pretentious, but there are times where it does come across as pretentious sometimes to some people, but
Right.
never to me. But then again, I am the world's #1 Argento apologist right here.
Hell yeah. Let me ask you this, for people that are curious about getting into Argento, I would almost say go ahead and start with Suspiria because it's so perfect and it's a masterpiece. A lot of people might not even love it the first time. It does take
Sure.
a lot of people, a couple viewings to really appreciate what it is. They're expecting something else. But let me ask you this: other than Suspiria, what would you say is the second best place to start, or do you think that there's another best place to start other than Suspiria?
Honestly, Suspiria is where I started, and I do think that's a good place to start. But like you mentioned, a lot of people won't fully realize it at first, right?
Mhm.
And if you're the kind of person who can see that something means something, but not quite get it yet, and so you will revisit it,
Yeah,
Suspiria is a great place to start,
hell yeah.
right? That's what happened to me. Like I watched Suspiria, I came out of it, and I was like, I don't really know what happened at that end there,
Mhm.
right? And I felt like some of it was disjointed, but there was something about that tone. It was mostly the cinematography, the colors, and the music.
Right.
In fact, our screens right now look like we're in
I know.
Argento. We're in an Argento
I
movie.
definitely noticed that.
And so, like, there was something mesmerizing and transfixing to me
Mhm.
visually and audibly with that movie. It's why I kept going back to it. So even though I didn't quite get it, I kind of went to it. But I grew up reading these Fangoria magazines and stuff like that, where
Mhm.
Suspiria was like this movie that I had never seen at my video stores, never watched, and it was always in the back of my mind as this like, oh, this movie might be too much for you. So when I did
Right,
watch it, there
right.
was a little bit of a, really? That was it?
Yeah, I could that's exactly what because I almost feel like I find myself describing him to people like it's crazy. It's so like wild and it is, but it's not like crazy and wild in the way that I was imagining it.
Yeah.
Like a big thing and why I say it's kind of jarring to start with Suspiria and then maybe go to the Giallo work that he did is because exactly what you said with these colors. If you go into Suspiria and you fall in love with the lighting, and
Yeah.
then you go watch Deep Red, you might be taken aback at first by how it's lit. It's something totally different, but totally amazing at the same time.
And most of his films are shot that way.
Right, right. The
Right?
majority.
Suspiria is very different because Suspiria was meant to be more dreamlike,
Mm-hmm.
more surreal. Same thing with Inferno, right? But I think Suspiria is a good place to start. But honestly, and if you do watch Suspiria before you rewatch again, watch Tenebrae. In fact,
Yeah,
I think Tenebrae might be a good starter
yeah.
Argento film. But honestly, Verno, at this point in my life, I think the best thing to do is watch Bird with the Crystal Plumage, watch Deep Red, watch Suspiria, watch Tenebrae.
Yeah.
That's the four right
Mm-hmm.
there. And that four shows the evolution of Argento. And then
Yeah.
everything else kind of fits in between that stuff. Because to be honest, those are the top four and nothing else he's done. As much as I love opera, as much as
Mm-hmm.
I enjoy Phenomena, as much as I like Dark Glasses,
Right.
right?
The new
As
one.
much as I like Cat and Nine Tails, those movies, like it's Deep Red, well, first of all, Bird with the Crystal Plumage, Deep Red, Suspiria, and Tenebrae. That's the Mount Rushmore to me of Argento. The Mount
Yeah.
Argento.
Let's dive into it, my friend. Masters of Horror, episode 4, Jenifer, written by Steven Weber, who's actually the lead actor in it, starring Steven Weber and Carrie Ann Fleming. We've got this guy, he's a cop, and he comes across this scene where he sees this guy about to kill this woman with a meat cleaver. He kills the man before he can kill the woman, but as he's going to like rescue her and untie her, he realizes she's got this really disformed and absolutely hideous, and if I could be honest, terrifying face. Like I watch a lot of scary shit. There is something extra terrifying about the way that this woman looks. So he ends up, I wouldn't say falling in love with her, but just kind of feeling sorry for her. He ends up bringing her into his home. Long story short, she's eating his cat. She's eating his wife. She's eating everybody that he knows. Every time he turns around, he's become almost in a way, I feel like obsessed with her. And there's a sex scene between those two, like every 4 to 5 minutes, there's a kill, then there's a sex scene, is pretty much the rhythm of this thing. So lay it on me, brother. Your overall thoughts on Jenifer.
I fucking love it. I think it's awesome. I don't think there's anything else out there like it.
Yeah.
Like at all, right? Like it's a really, first of all, it's a powerful little I don't even like to call these TV episodes. They are movies, right?
Yeah, they
Like,
actually they went into theaters in Europe and certain places around the world. A lot of
Oh, wow.
these went into theaters. Yeah.
Wow. So like, and I know that Argento even said he wanted to approach it as a movie, not a TV show. And I think everybody that did it, right? And Argento even said, why would you get these people that are involved if you want TV episodes? You want movies, is what you're
Right.
saying. You want shorter movies. And movies used to be short. And it just goes to show you that, yeah, you can make one of these kind of movies that has some gross out stuff, has some sexy stuff, has all this kind of energy to it, all this mystery, all this grotesque energy, and do it in just an hour and have it
Right.
be tight, right? So first of all, I love it because of the tightness of it. That's one of my favorite things is a lot of these horror filmmakers who were already used to keeping their movies very tight and lean. It's
Mhm.
even more of a necessity now, right? And they're making it work, and they're all making it work structurally. This one stands out to me in the first season because this one, now it's probably not the one that goes too far. Takashi Miike's his contribution was Imprint, which was actually too much for Showtime.
That's what I heard.
And they never even aired it on Showtime, and it came later. In fact, there were scenes that Argento filmed in this one that got cut.
I was wondering
by
if you knew that too.
Oh,
Yeah.
come on.
You heard what they were? There was
Yeah, it's when she's like sucking the dude's dick in the beginning and when she's
Yeah.
eating the kid's dick at the end.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Supposedly, yeah, it showed up close and personal her munching penises twice.
Oh yeah,
They
absolutely. I've
cut
seen
it
the footage
twice.
of it, man.
Have you?
It's gnarly. She's like ripping it apart like a fruit by the rope, man, or
Oh,
the fruit by the foot, right? She's like, it's one of those kind of things, super stringy, just right. It's great. It's awesome. But at that time, Showtime's like, I don't know, penis is a bridge too far.
Right.
But no, I really like it because it does kind of play with a lot of the stuff that Argento has played with in a physical manner, right? So Argento likes to play with the idea of the profane and the sacred, and he kind of likes to mix it. What I mean by the sacred is not necessarily a religious connotation, but like an artistic connotation, right? Like he comes from the country that birthed the Renaissance and shit like that, right? So like I said earlier, art and aesthetic is a big part of Argento's upbringing and what he brings
Mhm.
to cinema, right? And so in his movies, he's always playing with really gross things in beautiful ways, whether it's maggots infesting a witch dance school coven, right?
Mhm.
Or whether it's a beautiful woman crawling through sewage. And like he likes to play with these kind of juxtapositions. And he does that here with Jenifer, where Jenifer is a beautiful woman with
Mhm.
a very vigorous sex drive,
She's
right?
like the ultimate butterface.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, but a very gnarly, terrifying, grotesque, monstrous face. And when this story was initially written in the 70s by Bruce Jones and then illustrated by Bernie Wrightson, and if you've ever seen the art, look at the art of that book. If you look at the art, you look at the panels, Argento is recreating that.
Oh,
And
that's awesome.
that's another thing that's so cool is that in Europe, the graphic novel, it is highly respected as an art form in Europe, right? And so it's really cool to see such an appreciation for the original work that comes across. The design of the face, that's Bernie Wrightson. The design of the shots, some of the perspectives, some of the lighting, that's Bernie Wrightson. This is a love letter in tribute to Bernie Wrightson graphic storytelling. And of course, it takes an Italian director to give it to us. I think the story is really interesting. It's about obsession, of course, also infection. And though I know that this story was written by Bruce Jones in the 70s and STDs were around, but we hadn't hit that AIDS epidemic yet, it definitely has this lens that you could view it through now of like obsession and temptation mixed with infection, right? Because he
Right.
gets cut.
Right.
Right. That cut keeps getting more gnarly. She keeps like licking it. She keeps going at it. Right. He becomes more and more obsessed with her to the detriment of his life. And by the end of it, he looks like a crackhead. He looks like a meth head. He looks like a junkie.
Right.
You know what I'm
'Cause
saying?
there's that other part where it's like a metaphor for addiction as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I tell
Absolutely.
you.
I think it's a great film because he's playing with what he typically plays with, but with the actual presence, physical presence of Jenifer. and making some of they are not the raunchiest sex scenes he's ever done, trust me.
Oh,
But
really?
oh no. I mean, his Phantom of the Opera
I was
that
going
he
to
did
ask you about that.
is basically a softcore pornography, right?
Well, that's what this feels like. I mean, the sex scenes are so frequent. Like, I would almost have to classify it as softcore
Yeah.
pornography.
Oh, it's
Like,
nice. And also the way that dress that she's wearing is so thin, it just hits every fucking crack and cranny, if you
well,
know
that's
what
what
I'm talking
I'm
about.
there's something the first time that they have sex in the car, it's like she reaches back and runs. This is a little bit graphic, everybody. She runs like her finger through her ass crack of her nightgown or whatever she's wearing. Like, you don't see that on TV. Even like
Really?
Showtime, I wasn't prepared for like that kind of sexuality. And like,
Yeah.
just really go into it. It's full frontal. It's
Argento
aggressive.
loved it, man. He was so excited to do it. He talks about that deleted scene where the dude that scene in the car is with the scene where he gets to the blowjob, and
Mhm.
you see her tongue and mouth going over his dick and shit like that. And he's like, it was interesting to me to like explore the idea of what it would be like to get a blowjob from fucking that, like that, like oh.
Uh,
But it works because what it does is it makes us unnerved. It titillates us.
mhm.
It also makes us very disturbed, and it shows us that there's a very fine line, a very small, thin membrane between disgust and titillation. Some things that can excite me can repulse another person, right? And that's something that he's playing with here that I think he played with throughout his entire career, and I really like the story. And the performances are good enough, though. The wife,
Mhm.
as hot as she is, bro, she's not good in this movie.
Right.
I don't get that character. I don't dig it at all. But Steven Weber really does a great job.
Yeah.
The lady playing Carrie Ann, I can't remember her last name.
Fleming.
She does a great job as Jenifer for obvious reasons.
Right.
But yeah, man, like I know I fucking love it. I think it's great, and I think it's actually one of his better late period works.
Jennifer, what are you doing here?
The first time I saw it, I did not know that it was going to go where it goes. Because basically, it gets to the point she just ate his cat. He tried to take her home, like I said. She eats his cat, so she's got to go. Jennifer's got to go. The wife ain't having it. His son sees her naked. He's having it, but the wife, she's not. He goes to get rid of her. Jennifer comes on to him. I'm not going to lie. I could not believe how sexy it is the first time I saw it because she's so grotesque, but there was something very hot about it. And it really falls along the lines of a lot of porn that you'll see where it's, I don't know, it's like a weird situation where he has something over her. Like she's like almost like a fucking pet.
Yeah, she's like
In a way.
subservient, like in a
Yeah.
crazy way, right? And like Argento's playing with that, man. He's
Mhm.
doing that on purpose. He's filming it that way, and he's filming it that way so that we do get turned on, right? Because it is really sexy, and then at times scary, right?
Yeah.
But sometimes the fear, right? Like think about like the early days, right? When you're like first having sex, or let's
Mhm.
think about any time that you've ever tried to do something that you've never done before, or something that's on the horizon. There's this fear and dread and excitement and titillation that come from it, right? And that's what he's experiencing when I don't know what's going on in the scene with him and his wife when they're having sex and he's like flashing to her, right?
Yeah.
But like he's obviously gone too far. But Jenifer's someone who you can't go too far with, right? And
Right.
I don't know about you, but I've had sexual partners that were very plain, right? And vanilla. And I've had sexual partners that were way like Neapolitan.
Dude, that's what I was gonna say, dude. That's exactly
Right?
what I was gonna say.
And I've always figured myself to be in the middle, but like I love the stretch of it, right? I love taking people that are uncomfortable with something and making them more comfortable, and I love being uncomfortable with something and being made to be comfortable with it. Like, I mean, we're freaks in America, right? And at least in Dario Argento embraces that inner freak, and he's not
Right.
afraid to play with it. He's been playing with it for decades, you know, even when he was making this one. But I mean, that's a very intentional part of this movie, is that Jenifer is to die for, and you do like want that to happen, right?
Right.
But at the same time, it just shows you, like, man, we're so fucked up sometimes and twisted when we get into that animalistic side of our being and consciousness, where we will just throw everything out the window, including our family, our job, our health, And that's what happens to Steven Weber in this film.
You got any favorite moments that you want to throw at me? I'm sure there's a few to pick from.
Bro, this is so fucked up. You watch this movie and like, what are your favorite moments of this movie? Well, your favorite moments of this movie are some of the worst things that could fucking be in this movie, right?
Yeah.
My favorite scenes, number one, when she's killing the fucking cat.
Yeah.
Like she's like into it. Now that disturbs me. That bothers me. I don't like seeing that. And that's what I fucking love about this movie is that one of my other favorite scenes is the car scene when like they first have sex. Cause you're just like, why is this so hot?
Yeah.
I don't really understand why I'm fucking getting turned on right now watching this fucking movie.
That's
and then you cut to a scene like the cat killing scene where it's revulsive, right? Or repulsive. I guess
that's what it is, though. Exactly what you're saying. He makes you question what I didn't know that I could feel this way about that. He's like, guess what? You can. And look how hard you feel about it right now.
All my favorite scenes are fucked up. My other favorite scene is when she's eating the fucking child from next door. And the whole like homage to Frankenstein that we have there. That's a great fucking scene, right? And how different it's played and how that movie will go from like to and that scene with the chick where with the little girl from next door, she just licks her lips. Next time you see him, she's like eating her, right? And then she's eating that fucking kid's dick at the end of the movie. That's another one of my favorites. That's what I'm saying. These movies, like, we're not used to this anymore.
Right.
In 2002 or 3 or whenever this came out. Like aside from like The Hostel and Saw, and they didn't go as far as some of those movies in the 70s and 80s went.
For sure. I wasn't expecting, and like I said, I did start on this one. The other episodes of Masters of Horror that I've seen, I don't think they're quite as gnarly and as gross as this, but K&B Effects does the effects on like the whole series, Nicotero's company.
Yep.
And I was surprised right off the bat at how hard the series goes. For some reason, I don't know, just because it was Showtime, I wasn't expecting that level of gore and that level of practical effects that you see throughout the series. But this is probably the gnarliest one as far as that goes. As far as like the gore, the intestines flying around, toothy blowjobs. I mean, it's up there for being one of the gnarlier ones. I was gonna say one of my favorite moments is a weird one. In the opening scene, I wish I knew what it was. It's Steven Weber, main character, and his partner. They're sitting in that car together.
Joe Pesci light. That's his partner, right?
Yeah, exactly. They're eating some Chinese food and they're listening to the radio, and there's something like kind of old school, kind of classy, something kind of good, right? Something like tasteful on the radio. And the partner just reaches up and turns the dial, and it's like this country rock kind of generic bullshit. And nothing's said about it, but the main character just kind of like looks at the radio, and you can tell that he's fucking annoyed by the music.
Yep.
And then it carries on. The guy goes out, steps outside to drink his coffee, smoke a cigarette maybe. And it keeps flashing back at how much his partner is fucking raged on that music. Yeah. So it's informing you about these two characters. They haven't mentioned a word about it, but there's this like little thing going on with the music. And then the main character sees Jenifer being attacked down by the river, and it's the partner listening to the music that keeps him distracted, and he can't go help. So the way that this subtle little thing that was never mentioned is so like, if you're not paying attention, you're never going to notice it. It launches the plot in this way, and all of a sudden it's important. And to me, it was like just brilliant directing.
Well, yeah, that bit. It launches the plot and it launches the theme of the movie.
Right.
The whole idea of that one person's trash is another person's sacred art. Profanity to one person could be sacredness to another. And that's something that we don't get in art. And sometimes people take it too far. That's why like some people will take a dump on a fucking plate, put some sprinkles on it, and they go out and it's a world famous art piece or something like that, right? But there's art is meant to pierce the veil of experience. And sometimes that is in a very fleshy, very visceral, very primitive way. And that's an element of ourselves. And that's the thing is Steven Weber's character in this movie, Frank is his name. Frank has never experienced a sexuality like this before.
Right.
And it overcomes him because there is something within him, within all of us, that wants that caveman, visceral, raw sex, right? And it's that's the same thing with that music, right? Like we
Mm.
could all sit here and lie and be like, yeah, I just listened to Bach and Beethoven and Mozart and Handel and all that shit. And then be like, nah, man, fuck you. Hot Foghat is Beethoven of 1976. If you
Right.
know what I'm saying, man. Come on. Slow Ride, baby. Let's do it. By the way, Slow Ride, that's not something Jenifer knows about because she fucks hard, brother.
Yeah. Yeah. She does hard, hot, and repetitively.
And she starts making those like, she's like, what the fuck is? And we've all been in that situation where you're with a partner and you're like, what the fuck was that noise?
I'm gonna overshare right here. I was dating this girl like fucking years ago. I'm in high school. For whatever reason, one of our friends' moms just happened to tell us when you're having sex, most people tend to make like high pitched noise. She says if you make a low pitched noise, it makes the sex better. Just something she told us. The next day or whatever, I'm having sex with this chick and she's on top, and just in the middle of it, she goes, moo, just to fuck with me. It was like the most like, what the fuck?
You instantly ejaculated.
We'll save that bit of information. I've overshared enough. But all right. So once you give me, I didn't put it in the rundown, but you might have something floating around in that big brain of yours. If this film is saying something to you, throw that in there with your final thoughts. And I was tempted to not even grade this thing because it's something so different than what we do. But fuck it, grade the thing as well on a letter grade. You guys down watching the premiere? If you've seen Jenifer, which a lot of you probably haven't, give a grade. But if you haven't, go fucking watch Jenifer. Come back and let me know what you thought of it in the comments below.
Well, obviously, it's talking like we've already discussed in length the fine line between the profane and the sacred, right? And not, you know, a lot of people do that and they try to do it in a religious way, and that's fine and that's cool. But sometimes that like gets you in trouble. But you also do it with like sexuality and sex, and it also kind of gets you in trouble, right? But it's about that. It's about that fine line between repulsion and attraction and eroticness of repulsion, right? There's a reason why people pay people to shit on them. I mean, I'm not saying that I'm into it. And if you are, I mean, we don't kink shame here on Blood Splatter Chatter. We are sex positive, right? That's why we're talking about Jenifer. But so it's got that kind of juxtaposition, but also the idea of this, like, let's break this down to a practical, applicable level, right? How many of us have been into someone or been into something that is bad for us?
Right.
Not good. And we know from the fucking start, that motherfucker's a monster. I don't need to be a part of that, but there's something about that that attracts us, right? And we wind up getting involved, and all of a sudden everything gets fucked around us, and then we realize, shit, they were a monster. You know what I'm saying? So it's kind of playing with that idea too. Like, you know, like, and it's even applicable to the audience, not just with the titillation and repulsion aspect, which is a big part of the whole thing, but also the idea that if you know any kind of story structure, if you know anything about story, you know that this movie's going to end the same way it begins.
Right.
So does Steven Weber's character, Frank. So do we as the audience. So does everybody in this movie. Nobody at any point thinks this movie's going to go well, including Frank, right? Like at all. So, I mean, it's about that too. It's about that, like, just provoking and poking at that fine line between, you know, repulsion and attraction, but as well as just kind of like, we are all attracted to things that are not good for us. And sometimes it's so obvious, but it's so nice while we're doing it.
But cognitive dissonance.
Exactly. So that's what I would say. And as far as a letter grade, what am I supposed to compare this to, right? Other movies?
I know. That's
other
my
Argento films, television series? I'll tell you this. I will give it an A, because I do think that for a television series, for something with a smaller budget, for something that is a part of a whole that is something I really love and respect, Masters of Horror, this one really stands out to me.
Yeah.
So I think it's top notch. If this was PCP, I'd give it a 4.5. Here, I'd give it an A. A for ass. Jesus Christ.
That's why I said it's tricky to grade, because exactly what you said. What am I supposed to compare it to? And I think you're doing it the right way. You can only compare it to other Masters of Horror episodes, really, or other works of Argento, I suppose. But there's something about it being short. It takes some pressure off of the filmmakers because you forgive there not being a twist, or not that every film needs a twist, but like more
Or an
turns.
explanation.
Yeah,
Right?
or just like go somewhere. It's pretty straightforward. Like she kills something, they have sex. Kill something, they have sex, and it leads right to where you think it's supposed to. And if it's almost better that way than if they tried to make this into the full-length movie or a full-length movie. There's got to be a subplot. He's got to have a best friend that's doing something. You know what I mean?
Yep.
That's what I like about all
His
of
wife
these.
would be sleeping with his best friend who was Joe Pesci light in the
Right,
car,
right,
right?
right.
You know, there would
Jennifer
be all
kills
that.
him. He
Yeah, there'd be
gets
all that
Jennifer to
kind of
kill.
bullshit. Yeah, we don't need anything. In fact, this movie does kind of stretch itself a little bit too far when they get the circus freak show involved, right?
Yeah,
It's just
yeah,
a
I
little
love
bit.
that.
Right? And I'm like, why did you not cast Sid Haig as that guy? He would have been perfect for that
Yeah,
role.
right. It's such a tricky thing to grade. So I'll give it an A as well, man. It's so unique. And if you've never seen it, you've never seen anything like it. But hell yeah, man. Appreciate the hell out of you. Appreciate the hell out of all you guys. This is going to be airing the week before the kickoff of March Madness. I know you're kicking it off with Invisible Man. Why don't you just tell the folks what's going on? And just for anybody that's new to pop culture philosophers, just tell the people about the channel, man.
Yeah, Pop Culture Philosophers, you know, the award-winning channel. We talk about comics, movies, pop culture, and a whole lot more. We got the weekly comic book review every single Tuesday night. The new comics of the week. I read a bunch of them. I let you know what I think. Weekly pop culture wrap-up. What's the new trailers? What's the new news? Let us know. That's what I do every Saturday morning. Rockin Robbie Lives on Sunday night. But PCP Movie Night every Monday night. 8 p.m. Central Time. It's like a movie of the week club. What's better than a book club? A movie of the week club. And we pick some good ones. Even when it's a shitty movie, it's always worth watching, getting together with the homies and discussing it. And March Madness is coming up. And we're kicking off with one of the first truly great mad scientist movies, The Invisible Man.
Boom. Hell yeah, man. And over here on Blood Splatter Chatter, we will be kicking it off with Possession from 1981. So I urge you, if you've never seen that movie, it's on Shudder. It's been on Shudder for a while, but they actually just featured it. So if you go on there, you're going to see it's going to be one of the first things you see on Shudder. It is not right behind me. It's right here. Oh, and there's titties on it. I guess I can't show you that. This bad boy, right? Oh my God, there's one titty. I'm gonna cover that up. It's a great flick, man. It's not gonna be for everyone, but if you look at yourself as a lover of elevated horror from the modern era, then this might be something you would be into. Going back and seeing that elevated horror, as my buddy Robbie is constantly saying, is nothing new, and this is definitely that from 1981. Brilliant flick. So go check it out. Hit the like button, sub up. Make sure you go and checking out Robbie's channel, and we'll see you next time.